Hey, Har.
What's up, brother?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly.
I like it. I didn't even shave in your honor tonight, KR.
I mean, I didn't shave either, so we're both very unprofessional.
But you're going beard again, right? Or are we on our way back to
We
the
are back. The wife demanded the beard to come back, so the beard is coming back.
I like it.
I
No.
think Arizona just scored another run.
That didn't go great for the Oklahoma pitching staff.
How
Uh,
about start the weekend? Whew.
yeah. That I'm not yeah, I don't know. There's 4 days in Frisco, so I'm not gonna make any crazy judgments yet, but it was man, that was tough for the Oklahoma pitching staff. I don't understand. I'm very pro umpire, especially here in Arizona. We got awesome umpires. I don't understand small strike zones though. Like you're just asking for problems. Never
Yeah,
understood that.
yeah, especially in college baseball. I mean, you can't expect guys, especially this early in the season, to be pinpoint with their command. I actually, last week in Round Rock, the zones are pretty tight, but the zone was really consistent. So I'm kind of one of those people, like, I'm actually okay with your zone being tight as long as you're really consistent with it. If you're consistent with it, I'm okay with it. But the
Yeah.
problems are pretty inconsistent with it.
Yeah, I like it is tricky, right? Because you start expanding the zone, then it's like where do you stop? I get it. It's a slippery slope no matter which way you slice it. So
But well, I don't know if we necessarily need the Aaron Nola strike zone though.
was that massive?
Oh, back as LSU days. Oh yeah, probably. I think you got like a foot off the plate.
Yeah, that's called home cooking. I love the home cooking. Oh goodness. Um, so you have Shriners this weekend, KR, right?
Yeah, how about that? I'll see Texas Tech and TCU again. TCU is going to look a little different without Johnny Ray and Marcelo Perez. They're out with a little Rona protocol, so they will miss this weekend. I think my understanding is Perez will probably be back in midweek next week, and then Johnny Ray potentially next weekend. So it will be interesting to see the Frogs without a number one guy and their top reliever. Obviously, I'm very intrigued to see Texas Tech again, and then obviously Sam Houston State with Colton Cowser and Jack Rogers. Sam's kind of gotten off to a little bit of a slow start. Now, this is a program that typically gets off to a fast start, but you look over the weekend against UTSA, I think they gave up like 30 runs or something in 2 games.
Mm.
Biryani baseball. So I'm intrigued to see Sam Houston this weekend. And, obviously it's a big year for Rice. Matt Braga, they need to take a big step forward. And they got swept by Louisiana last weekend. Can they bounce back this weekend at Shriners? And also about 4 miles down the road, you got Houston against Texas. The Cougs, what runs they hit, 8 home runs in one game over the weekend, and Ryan Hernandez wasn't even one of them. And they go against Ty Madden tomorrow night. So I'm gonna boogie on over to Minute Maid in the afternoon, then catch Ty Madden against that potent Houston lineup tomorrow night. Should be a lot of fun.
I love it. Hey, KR, before we jump into some topics and then we'll jump into like a preview. So our good friend Graham Rossini, who's back in college baseball after a long run. Graham Rossini is literally, he was the Roy Hobbs of director of baseball ops. He was the best there ever was. Then he was like, vice president with the Diamondbacks of a million different things, special projects. He did the All-Star game. He did the spring training facility, which is amazing. So anyway, Graham texted me today and said, hey, start naming the best backdrops in college baseball, meaning like when you're sitting in the stands, just so he mentioned like LSU, the Intimidator. He mentioned Mississippi State, just that whole thing. A couple of things I gave him were Pepperdine. I said Arkansas is kind of like Daytona 500 when you're
Yeah.
sitting in the stands. It's like so. Yeah, we can if you think of some during the call tonight, fire away with them. But I
Well,
also did. Go ahead, you go.
so I have 3 that come to mind immediately. Utah, Willie McCovey Field
Woo.
with the Wasatch Mountain Range in the distance. You've got BYU with the Wasatch Mountain Range in the distance. Actually, not really in the distance. It's like right there.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually really, really like the backdrop at Rice. If you've ever
Yes.
there, it's like right there in the medical center in downtown. Well, they call it downtown Houston, but like it's off of downtown, but it's the medical center, and it's just massive skyscrapers right outside the outfield. So actually, back in that old NCAA baseball game they actually did a really good job of the backdrop directly, and it
Yeah.
looked cool. So I always enjoy that, especially at night when you have all those buildings lit up and the lights are, the stadium lights are kind of bouncing off those big skyscrapers. It looks pretty cool.
Yep, Swayze's another good one. I see, Steven.
Oh,
Hey, Georgia Tech. I've never been to Georgia Tech, but they have a cityscape too, don't they?
yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's way off in the distance. They've got like a couple of fraternity houses in the right. Actually, I got a funny story. This is several years ago now. I was watching North Carolina and Georgia Tech, and Daniel Palka. If people have ever been to Russ Chandler, Matt Neese Ballpark, if you ever actually been there, there's like a frat house across the street in right field. Well, Daniel Palka literally one hopped the front door at the frat house against North Carolina one year. It's one of the most ridiculous home runs I've ever seen, other than Elijah Cabell from over the weekend.
Yeah, that Elijah Cabell one was pretty awesome. Yeah, so we have to think about some of those other ones. I think I said this already, but Pepperdine, obviously, you got the ocean. Yeah, it's just interesting. I mentioned South Carolina not because it's got like this view from the stands, but any park with a 360 concourse, I think is super cool.
We got Nebraska with the Memorial Stadium out in left field.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Boy, I'm trying to think of some other good ones.
I think Texas is pretty cool. I love like the bus in right field and all that stuff. And
yeah, that's neat.
I said A&M and Oregon State have the trains in right field. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, those are great. I actually used to love the old Packard Stadium at ASU with you had the freeway out and left. And I don't know, it just kind of gave you an old school feel.
Tempe Town Lake and then the palm trees. That's actually one of the things Graham mentioned was the palm trees at Packard, or that's fairly iconic.
Yeah, the backdrop at Phoenix Community is actually not bad.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think I agree. And High Corbett down in Tucson, they get these incredible skies, and it's a very festive atmosphere in non-pandemic times. So.
Or New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, and Ray Birmingham can correct me here, but I'm pretty sure they have the mountains of the Sandia Mountains out in the distance beyond their right field wall or left field wall. I can't remember, but there's a big mountain range outside their wall.
Kendall, your command of mountain game right now is like an easy 80. Is there something we don't know? Were you a geographer in a previous life, or what do you got?
Dude, we used to go to the Rockies all the time, so I know all those areas. I think West Virginia, Aaron Fitt could correct me here, but I'm pretty sure West Virginia has the Appalachians right outside of its wall. It's not right there, but I'm pretty sure you can see them from inside the ballpark.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
Those are the ones I think off the top of my head.
Yeah, we'll keep thinking. You know what's a sneaky, beautiful situation is I love X Stadium at Wichita State because it's so tall. It's got a little juice when you get in there. It's a fairly intimidating place, I think.
I've got one more for you, and it was the most surprising place I've ever been. But a few years ago, I covered a series of Boshimer. It was actually the year that Maryland got to the Super Regional.
Mm-hmm. 15 or 14?
Man, I can't remember now. But I remember I had never been to Boshimer, and the place is packed. And that was a really cool venue. You kind of walk up that hill from your parking spot,
mm-hmm.
Walk down into the seats, and
mm-hmm.
when that's packed, it's pretty neat. It's a really cool ballpark.
I agree. Yeah, that is a cool ballpark. So, all right, KR, let's do this. I want to talk about Arizona State. You tweeted out today they're going to lose two really important arms. Cooper Benson and Boyd Vanderkoy are going to have Tommy John surgery. Vanderkoy's a veteran, had a killer 2020. He's kind of you can pitch him in a variety of roles, which I think gives him extra value. Benson had really established himself as their Friday night guy. They had already lost Connor Davis, who was their 3-hole hitter for the year. And then last year they had a legit national title team. Yeah. They were going to be in that mix, and then they don't get to play it out. So, I get it when programs are judged, and, Tracy Smith in particular, when he's judged, we always defer to the postseason. But I just think, man, these last 2 years, he had a real chance to put a stamp on his tenure at Arizona State, and both of them have vanished. And so I feel just heartbroken for that program and for those kids because I think they were sneaky good this year, but this is going to be really tough now.
Yeah, the two schools that really stand out to me in this regard, Runes, are Arizona State and A&M. And the reason A&M, you think back to last year, to have Asa Lacy, Christian Rowe as your 1 and 2 guys that both get drafted in the top 2 rounds, all of a sudden, as we see now, like A&M's kind of retooling their pitching staff. I mean, it's like Arizona State's like A&M on roids. You get Torque, Gage Workman, I'm drawing a blank now, but
Trevor Halver. Yeah, I mean,
loaded lineup, and you don't get a full season with those guys like that. Spencer Torkelson is a once-in-a-lifetime player. Rob told me Asa Lacy's a once-in-a-lifetime pitcher. Spencer is that way, is a hitter. So to not be able to go through a full season with a guy like that and a lineup like that, and then come back this year and lose Cooper Benson, who reminds me a lot. I mean, he's a little bit stronger, a little bit bigger, muscular-wise, but like to me, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Christian Chamberlain. Just kind of hard-nosed lefty.
Yeah.
He's going to get a big hook. He's going to challenge you. He's not scared of you. Like, I just feel like Cooper Benson is like a tone setter on a Friday night. And so without him, somebody's going to have to step up. And, you mentioned Boyd Vanderkoy. And granted, like, I've been one of those people who has not been sold on him in the past. But you're right. I mean, he did have a really good spring. They were expecting big things out of him. So I think when I look at Arizona State moving forward, who did we hear about when he transferred out a couple of years ago from St. Mary's? Tyler Thornton. A guy like that's going to have to step up. Justin Falls is going to have to step up. Eric Tolman. All three of those guys, to me, have a lot of talent. But, they're going to have to step up for ASU to not only have a chance to compete in the Pac-12, but have a chance to get to regional. I'll tell you what, if Tracy can lose Cooper Benson and Boyd Vanderkoy and still make a regional, that's a hell of a coaching job.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and obviously they just, he just got an extension, which I think is awesome. And
yeah,
it's but I get it. At Arizona State, Omaha is the expectation, and it has been a drought. So yeah, it's tricky. Hey, I want to give props, KR. We had two teams that had to take a pause, West Virginia and Wake Forest, for COVID, and then that left Kent State and who else am I missing? Oh, Boston College that are left without weekends. And quickly, I'm so pleased with the college baseball community that we've been able to kind of turn and pivot so quickly, because Kent State is going to go to Starkville, right?
Correct. Yeah, Luke Albright versus Christian McLeod in series opener. That's a really good matchup.
That will be really good. And our guy, Jeff Duncan. I love Jeff Duncan. I got to coach at Arizona State. He's the best.
Salt of the earth. And you got BC and Auburn. Aaron Fitt was going to go see Mason Pelio against Ryan Cusick at Wake. Obviously, Wake's on a pause because of COVID. Now you get Mason Pelio against Richard Fitz. I can't
love it.
Actually making that long drive down to Auburn just to see his man Fitz against Mason Pelio. But that's a fascinating series. Auburn dropped out of the top 25 this week, but they're close. And then you look at BC, who entered the top 25. That's just a fascinating series, especially when you look at the dynamic between the ACC and the SEC. I feel like Auburn and BC are very similar in the pecking order in those two conferences.
Yeah, I just it's interesting to me, KR. BC has a little edge to them. That's an older group, and yeah, I'm in on BC. Like I'm pushing my chips in the middle of the table. I've been a little bit more cautious in the past, but I just it's funny. Like Mike Gambino said, hey, I think Sal Frelick's a legit Golden Spikes candidate, and I think all of us said, yeah, we like Sal Frelick, but I don't know, that feels strong. But man, like I'm in.
I mean, I was in on Sal Frelick when Aaron said it was his favorite player ever. I mean, be in on that, right?
That's strong. That is strong. Oh, I love it.
The big key for BC is, Emmett Sheehan's thrown really well for them. Obviously they have Paleo, and then their lineup's done a really nice job. So, BC is not just a team that just has 3 or 4 really good players. That looks like a really balanced club, at least right now.
Yeah. Kendall, before we get to going here, so the Shriners thing is triple headers every day, right?
Yes.
How is your hose feeling? Like, do we need to get you on a pitch count? Do you feel like we've got you built up enough for another weekend of triple headers?
Well, so I'll feel better this weekend than I did opening week, and I'll be honest with you. Opening day, finishing at like 2:30 in the morning and getting to bed at about 3:45 was not fun. I was not baseball ready. We tell the kids in Little League baseball, baseball or softball ready. I was neither. I was in bad shape the next day. But, I recovered at the Round Rock tournament. I want to thank the Peak Vince guys for only doing 2 games a day. That was a blessing. And so now we go back to 3 games a day. And, yeah, I don't even know if I want to talk about it.
What's your caffeinated beverage of choice, KR?
Oh, I'm at least 600 milligrams of caffeine a day.
Straight black coffee, or what do you mix and match?
go all black. I'll do a little Spark energy drink. I mean, I like if it has caffeine, I'll inject it into my body.
I like it. I'm
Yeah,
with you. Black coffee. Give me all the black coffee. I'm in on that.
with me.
I love it. Hey, what about, by the way, KR, the Frisco tournament, saw that on Flow Sports and the D1 branding all over the place. Well done by somebody.
Yeah, that was awesome. You know, they did the same thing at Round Rock. You kind of walked around the concourse. There was D1 Baseball over the place. Seventh inning. They talked about D1 Baseball. So the guys at Peak Events do an amazing job. I'm actually. It actually sounds like they're in the works of getting like more tournaments across the country. So those guys are just getting started. They do a really nice job. They take care of those teams, and I'm intrigued by that tournament. I think you look at Oklahoma. Obviously, not a great day today, but you know they kind of pitched off. They didn't start Wyatt Olds. He starts tomorrow for them. I'll be interested to see if he can kind of bounce back from his poor outing last weekend. Then you look at Missouri, Steve Beazer and company. They split a series last weekend, surprisingly. They need a big weekend, especially when you look at that, Murderers Row, the SEC schedule looming in the distance. Then you look at DBU. They're fighting Ryan Wobleski's your boy over there.
That's right.
A statement weekend for them. They played pretty well so far. They took a series from Gonzaga last weekend, but for a program like DBU in that conference, they need to take care of business this weekend.
Yeah, I agree. This is there's these are a bunch of teams that I think we're still trying to figure out, and so there's some statements to be made this weekend for sure. So, all right, KR. Oh, go ahead.
I'm a little scared to talk to Coach Nathan about Arizona's pitching today, though.
Yeah. It sounded like the home plate umpire was strict, and so that led to some tough starts, and not to mention the fact was the wind was howling out. That was a tough day for pitching coaches.
Yeah, it's even in Houston, like the wind's blowing about 30 miles per hour out. So UH's ballpark actually faces northwest. So the Texas UH series can get mighty interesting with the long ball.
KR, seriously, very impressed. You're showing command of mountain names, wind command, like you're knowing which way winds are blowing. I mean, this is next level. That's great. I like it. All right, KR, I'm going to take you across the country. I'm on our D1 Baseball scores page, which is this is probably my favorite web page. So KR, give me one series from the American Athletic that has you intrigued this weekend, and I will do the same. You go first.
That has me intrigued. Well, I've already talked about Texas UH, so I'm not going to cheat on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Liberty UCS really interesting. I was talking
to
last weekend. Granted, TCU kind of had its way with Liberty after the first game of the series. But, when I talked to him, he said, hey, the Flames are really good. And I know we were high on them in our Big South preview. So, you look at, Liberty going against UCF. UCF, obviously, the big series win over Ole Miss last weekend. Alex Freeland had some big hits. Can he kind of emulate that this weekend? You look at Colton Gordon, the Jones kid. Was it Andrew Jones on Saturday?
AJ Jones, is that right?
Yeah, it's AJ, yeah. He pitched really well against Ole Miss, and then you look at a big arm like Jack Sinclair. That's a fascinating series between two teams that are certainly seem to be headed the right direction.
Yeah, and I'll just double down on your Texas Houston. I think that's a big series for both teams. Texas is trying to rewrite their story, because the first weekend in Globe Life was not great. Houston is a team that didn't have a great 2020 and really had a good recruiting class, and they're off to a good start. So I like it. Go ahead.
I'm going to bang myself here. I said that Liberty was in the Big South. I knew whenever I said that I was wrong.
Well, they are a conference changer. So I think you get 3 years to Yeah.
As soon as I said Big South, I would go, you know what, that's wrong. So
yes.
I look verified, that's why.
They are a weird fit in the ASUN, though, right? Like they're just they're geographically
Big
weird.
South's better with Liberty.
Yes, well said. And Coastal back in the day.
Yeah.
All right, Kendall, let's go to the Atlantic Coast Conference. 6 series last weekend, 5 visiting teams won. So, you could even pick the non-conferences, but why don't we pick 2 each in the ACC? You go first. What's one that's jumping right off the page at you in the ACC?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one for me is number 5 Louisville and number 12 Georgia Tech. I mean, Georgia Tech looked the part. They looked very good. They looked like a championship contender. Kevin Parada, the talented freshman behind the plate, had a big weekend. To see if Georgia Tech can kind of, again, we talked about other teams emulating performances, after a big series win at NC State, can they play at that same level? And it's a Louisville team that, hey, for good reason, like you have question marks about them. They lose a Friday game against Western Illinois. They, didn't look the part in a midweek game. So, like, Louisville has some questions to answer. So you have one team like Georgia Tech where we always kind of sit there and go, hey, they need to prove it. Then you have a Louisville team that it's always like, oh, they don't need to prove it. Now they might need to prove it. There's some question marks about those guys. So I'm kind of intrigued by that series. I think the other one for me, Runes, is Pittsburgh at Duke. Off that series loss last weekend against Pittsburgh, a team that went on the road, swept Florida State. It was really interesting. I was talking to Mike Bell for a story I did yesterday on the site, and he said, you know what, listen, like, this is going to be a weird year. I've been telling my kids that weird things are going to happen. And, yeah, you know what, like, we swept them, and that's a big deal. But listen, we have 12 weeks of ACC play. Like, we cannot get overly excited about this. So I'll be very fascinated to see if Pitt can go on the road to Duke in a big series like that, and see if Mitch Myers and Matt Gilbertson can pitch the way they did in Tallahassee. But I'll say this: Mike Bell might not make a huge deal out of sweeping them in Tally, but the guy was there for 7 years in Florida State. He knows how hard it is to sweep a series there, and that's pretty.
Yeah, it's unheard of. I mean, Florida. Let's not forget, KR. Florida State is a tough place to play. As somebody who went there twice and got swept, so yeah, that is a serious home field advantage. Hey, before I give you my 2 ACC series, Kendall, somebody in the chat, SCLA Fanit, said Arizona's the worst place to play. Pre-pandemic, the crowd is rude and drunk, and I just want to say that's actually why it's an awesome place for college baseball, because he is right. They are. I'm telling you, at High Corbett, Kendall, they are serving beers this big. I can't even get in the screen. It's a very collegey crowd. I mean, it is festive. It's super hot. It's loud. It feels like you're trying to play a baseball game on Bourbon Street to me. So I am all in on High Corbett Field.
It's actually an Arizona-related story. I think back to that Super Regional they played when Arizona was absolutely loaded with Dale Schlereth, who actually didn't play in the Super. But with all those guys, and they went to Coral Gables.
2008, yeah.
Guys, I mean, I'll go ahead and say, like, there were a lot of 4-letter words being screamed from the stands. Here was unbelievable. Like, those people were hostile, and it was freaking awesome.
I love it. All right, let me give you 2 ACC series, Kendall, because I think this, to me, is telling the story. The ACC playing 12 weekends, it's going to be dicey. And what happens is 32-ounce beers. That's right. Yeah, 32-ounce, maybe even rounded. They might even be a little bit bigger. So you can get in a rut in the ACC this year, and you could bury yourself if you're not careful. And I'm talking to you, NC State. I'm talking to you, Florida State. So Florida State's hosting Virginia, and NC State's hosting Miami. So I think let's take NC State, Miami, first of all. If Miami loses this series, now they go from heroes of the world beating Florida on the road to you've lost 2 ACC series in a row. And I feel like NC State is going to give them everything they want and more. And then, Florida State, I mean, do we start to get a little anxious if Florida State loses 2 straight home series, which they could easily do? Again, that's not Florida State losing 2 series. That's 2 straight home series. So I think those 2 series are going to be fascinating also.
Yeah, Runes, the thing that seemed out to me about the ACC, and granted, I mean, the SEC has a lot more star power at the top. But when you look at this ACC schedule every weekend, I mean, there's not a bad matchup. A couple of teams where you can go, you know what, like if Florida played Missouri, you're not sitting there going, oh, that's an intriguing series. You're kind of like, oh, Florida is probably going to win the series. When you look at the ACC this weekend, like I look at every series and go, you know what, I could see either winning that series. Like I think they're all toss-ups. You got North Carolina going to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech coming off that big series win against Miami. Scott Forbes' Tar Heels pitched really well. I think the bullpen threw like 12. Was it 7 shutout innings over the weekend, the last 2 games for the Tar Heels? So their bullpen going to Virginia Tech. You have Notre Dame at Clemson. Your Fighting Irish were really impressive last weekend. Clemson, I feel like, is one of those teams like looking for something to prove. It's like Clemson has always kind of got the benefit of the doubt, but they finally have, I wouldn't say they've dropped, but they're kind of finally one of those programs that has to prove it a little bit. So, they're going to go in there with a chip on their shoulder. That's a really fun series to me as well.
Yeah, no question. Hey, we got a question about the Hokies and are they for real? I just say, first of all, the Gerard kid, North Jersey, like little lefty with a big chip on his shoulder. I love him. And Coach Chef is a program builder. So give me both of that.
Of course, you go with the North Jersey guy. I'll say this: um, a John Chef coach team, if they're playing at this kind of level, I mean, I think they probably are for real.
Yeah.
Back and look at Aaron's fall report on those guys. Add T.J. Rumfeld and guys like that. I mean, they've got some bats in that lineup. They've got some arms. So John Chef has worked some miracles before, so this wouldn't be that shocking.
Yes, no question. All right, KR, I'm going to combine the A-Sun and the what happened to me there? I'm going to combine the A-Sun and Conference USA, and I'm just going to pick the series for us. Florida Gulf Coast playing FAU. Both teams off to killer starts. We got a question about FAU. I'll just ask you, KR, what are your thoughts going into FGCU versus FAU?
Again, kind of like some of these teams who have pulled big upsets, like I'm really, really curious to see if like FAU, they've had a huge last couple of weeks. They take that series from UCF. They beat Florida in a midweek game. Mike Intenza was awesome out of the bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
Against a tough, well-coached Dave Tillett team at FGCU, can they avoid a letdown? Can they continue to, play the way they played the last couple of weeks? Yeah, that's a really interesting series to me because, FGCU is solid every year. And, of course, Johnny Mack does a great job at FAU.
No question. Yeah, that is a series with some serious implications because those are two teams off to a really good start. So the Big 12, KR, I'll cheat and go first. I'm really curious about Grand Canyon and Oklahoma State. Those are two teams off to a really good start. Now, Grand Canyon did get hammered by Oregon State, but they could have easily won. That series could have gone differently. They really should have won Pearson All-Star. But I just think Oklahoma State's off to a killer start. Grand Canyon's a team I think very highly of. I'm really curious to take a peek at that one.
Yeah, that is really interesting. You look at Pearson Ole against Bryce Osmond, I'm assuming, in that series opener. I've heard Osmond has been up to 96, 97 here early in the season. So if that's the pitching matchup in the opener, that's fascinating. And, Oklahoma State, not only are they hitting the ball, but they're, Rob Walton's pitching staff's really, really pitching at a high level.
Yeah. Hey, Kendall, with the Shriners, is there any one matchup in the Shriners Classic that has you most intrigued? Like I'm looking at tomorrow night, Texas Tech at Texas State. That's super interesting to me. Is that the one, or is there another game that you're like, dang, I'm really fired up for this one?
Yeah, I would just say TCU against Texas State or Texas Tech against Texas State. Texas State, this is a big weekend for those guys. They go out, Sac State gets swept. And granted, that was a tough turnaround. If you remember, they scheduled a series on like a Thursday afternoon. They turned around and went to Sacramento on Friday. So that was a really tough turnaround. They get swept by the WAC favorite as the Sun Belt favorite. They get trounced by Texas last night in midweek action. But this is a big weekend for the Bobcats because they don't win the league, and they had that Sac State weekend, and they go 1-2 this weekend. They're behind the 8 ball when it comes to the postseason. And I get it. People are going to go, oh, well, it's early in the year. Like, talking about postseason right now, you're silly. But if you're a mid-major, like, you cannot afford 2 losing weekends and get in as an at-large.
That's right. Yeah. Now you're kind of painting yourself into a win your conference tournament deal. All right, KR, I'm going Big East Summit. I'm combining. How about, and I think our fearless leader, Kyle Peterson's going to be at this series. Creighton is going to help the Omaha Mavericks open up their new ballpark. I think it's called Tal Anderson Ballpark. It looks amazing. And they're opening up that. So assuming it's not 20 degrees in Omaha this weekend, they should have some really good crowds, Creighton against Omaha.
They really should. I was actually looking at pictures the other day of that ballpark, and it looks fantastic.
It really does. Yeah, so that'll be a fun one to keep an eye on. All right, let's do the Big Ten, KR. We're I think in general, fired up that the Big Ten is opening up this weekend. Is there something about the Big Ten slate that piques your interest?
I'm just really curious to see about some of these teams that we feel like could be really good, but we aren't real sure about. Like Maryland, for instance. Like, Patrick went really bullish with Maryland in our preseason Big Ten rankings. Maryland has some things to prove outside of having Marty Costas, on the mound. They've got some guys who have big arms, but, need to go out there and prove it. So, can they take a step forward? Nebraska, I kind of call it the first official year of Will Bolt because you didn't get a full year year. They go down and get to face Michigan this weekend. Nebraska is really interesting with Spencer Schwellenbach and company. And then, just teams like Indiana, Michigan. Michigan, the last time I saw those guys play, they were playing the College World Series. So, now Willie Weiss is healthy. Stephen Hazard's back. When we saw him out in the desert last year against Arizona State, he was making Spencer Torkelson look silly, which is pretty impressive. It's pretty almost impossible to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, does Michigan, because they got off to a little bit of a slow start last year, does Michigan kind of get back to being Michigan a little bit?
Yeah, I like it. I'll say this about the Big Ten, Kendall. I love the fact that there's a bunch of teams up in Minneapolis where I'm assuming they're playing in U.S. Bank, where they can play games all night long. Are they playing at Minnesota or in U.S. Bank?
They're playing at U.S. Bank because
Yeah.
Almost Cyber Field would be a little too cold.
That's right. That's a good point. Northwestern's up there, Penn State, Indiana, Rutgers, Minnesota, obviously. I think the one that's really the most intriguing matchup is Illinois and Ohio State. But hey, they're playing 44 conference games, so we'll have plenty of time to figure out the Big Ten.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm disappointed they didn't play non-conference, but I'm also like, hey, they're playing baseball, so I'm happy for them. And Aaron will actually be down at Greenville for Illinois, Ohio State, Maryland, and Michigan State. And Patrick actually hitting the airways to Minneapolis for Indiana, Rutgers, Northwestern, and Penn State. So we'll have a lot of Big Ten coverage this weekend.
I love it. And those guys, Patrick, Ebert, and Burt Granger, did such an awesome job on our Big Ten preview in the preseason. That was phenomenal, those guys.
Like Christmas Eve for them.
Yes, no question. Big West, KR, anything catch your attention in the Big West?
You know what? I'll give you Oregon and UC Santa Barbara. Oregon obviously hasn't made a big statement this year so far. But, Mark Wasikowski, the talent level at Oregon is certainly improving. Kenyon Jovan's back for another year. Then you look at UC Santa Barbara, who runs. I thought that was one of the more impressive just series performances last weekend. Not only sweeping Pepperdine, but honestly, they pretty much dominated the WC preseason favorite. So either Pepperdine is very much overrated in that league, or UC Santa Barbara is that good. And I think UCSB is probably that good.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll tell you the one I'm going to pick out real quick is Fullerton and Southern Cal. I think they're two mystery teams for me. I cannot figure these two teams out. I think it's going to take more than this weekend to figure it out. But I also say this, like both teams need to kind of get it going, right? Like I don't know what to make of those two teams, and both of them have a lot of heavy lifting ahead of them in the leagues that they play in and the schedules they play. So I'll be peeking at that one. I'm really curious about those two teams.
Well, and I'll say this about Fullerton. I'm a little concerned about it. Obviously, Jason Brandell's off to a really good start offensively for the Titans. But, sitting there with a losing record right now, and they have, USC, UCLA, Pepperdine, UCLA. So they get UCLA twice this weekend. Then they go to ASU. Then they have a 4-gamer UCSB. If they struggle in these next 3 weekends, they're in big trouble.
Yeah. There's just no place to – the problem for Fullerton is there's no place to hide in their non-conference schedule. And then the Big West is deeper than it's ever been, and so that's a problem. And so, yeah, you better start playing good quickly.
Which by the way, that league has really struggled over the last 2 years. So I'm glad to see the Big West kind of back right now.
Yeah, it's very easy. Like it wasn't that long ago that they were going to Omaha 4 straight years, 2014 to 2017. That league sent somebody to the promised land every year. Hey, I'm going to skip the Colonial, even though it's a great baseball league. There's just nothing super compelling this weekend. I guess UNCG. Elon, but we'll come back to the Colonial on future previews. We talked about Conference USA. The one thing I will say, KR, there's one series in Conference USA that you have to pick. You are by contract forced to pick. You see the one I'm talking about?
By contract.
This is right in your sweet spot, Conference USA.
McNeese and Louisiana Tech?
Heck yeah. At the Love Shack, right? Come on. That's
Love Shack with that, aren't they?
Oh, say it again?
No, never mind. They played at the Love Shack last weekend. I was thinking the Bulldogs were opening the new Love Shack.
Oh, yeah. They did.
He's going into Louisiana Tech. That's, Lane Burroughs always has the Bulldogs ready. And my man Will Dion at McNeese, our reigning national player of the week.
That's right.
19 strikeouts last weekend against Prairie View. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to raise my hand and go out on a limb and say that Will Dion does not strike out 19 this weekend. If he does, he might be back-to-back player of the week.
That's right. If he does, that's right. So the one I'll pick, KR, real quickly is Indiana State at FIU, Florida International, who's not off to an awesome start. You know, they're 4-3, but against two northern teams, UIC and Miami of Ohio, that they should be better than 4-3 after hosting two cold weather teams, I think. But I think we all believe in Mervel Melendez. Eventually, he's going to get that rolling.
Right? I mean,
yes,
the guy's a hell of a coach.
He really is.
Off that Tennessee, Indiana State had a very good shot to win 3 or 4 against a ranked Tennessee team on the road. So keep an eye on the 6.
Yep. Hey, I'll tell you. So the MAC, only one, KR, that I'll touch on real quick. So Ball State's going to go to Kentucky, and Ball State took 2 out of 4 from Arizona, and Arizona has been on a tear ever since. So, and I'm very bullish on Kentucky. I'm really curious to see what Ball State and Kentucky, what that series amounts to. That's an interesting one.
Well, that'll give you a pretty good idea of what to expect, with Kentucky this year, considering Ball State played pretty well against a good, not great Arizona team. You know, the matchup I'm kind of looking forward to is Miami, Ohio against Connecticut. I'm assuming that Miami starting Bachman in that opener. I see Bachman to go against Reggie Crawford and company. Bachman actually touched 100 on one pitch last week. I think it was 100.8 on the radar gun. So I'm intrigued to see how he does against UConn. And, UConn, give Jim Penders a lot of credit. Like, he's scheduled crazy difficult going to UVA opening weekend, Southern Miss last weekend. Connecticut's suddenly in a spot where they need to win some games.
Look at our guy Burke chiming in there with the Ball State cards, John Baker. Honestly, John Baker has been at Ball State for a long time. He could be the president of the school by now.
I feel like John Baker was in school and Teddy Cahill was at Ball
State. Teddy was his bullpen catcher. That's an unsubstantiated rumor. Oh, that's great. The Valley, I think the big story in the Valley for me this week, Kendall, is DBU at Frisco. What do they get done in Frisco?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, DBU, Blaine Jones and company, they're a really good team. So I'm intrigued. Actually, I think they're playing right now. So I'm going to actually, when we get off of this, I'm going to tune in and check out the Patriots. But, hey, you got to keep an eye on Western Illinois and Evansville. How about that? You got the Leathernecks won one game against Louisville last weekend. Evansville, gave Georgia, Kentucky all they can handle. So there you go. That's an interesting series.
Yeah. So Kendall, the Northeast Conference, the NEC. I wrote that preview. I think that's up for several awards. My NEC preview, but I'm not going to mention one of their matchups, but I do think we can't state enough that the NEC has one of the best conference hashtags in college athletics. Their hashtag is all caps, all in, ball out is their conference hashtag.
That's really their hashtag?
That's it. All in, ball out. And it's in all caps. It's not as good as the Fun Belt. It's not as good as Get Some Action, but it's still really good.
Yeah.
OVC, anything grab you in the OVC?
Yeah, actually there is. Jacksonville actually hosting Southern Miss. If you remember, Jacksonville was our preseason, was Mark Etheridge's preseason.
Jacksonville State, by the way, the Gamecocks.
Yeah, Jacksonville State Gamecocks. That was the team that Mark Etheridge had picked to win that conference in the preseason. So getting Southern Miss to actually make the trip up there to play, that's a big series for the Western Gamecocks.
Yeah, and Jacksonville State's got a newly renovated ballpark, which looks amazing. I think it's renovated, not brand new. So good on Southern Miss to make that trip. I think that's awesome when teams do that for each other. How about the Pac, KR? What grabs you in the Pac?
Pepperdine, UCLA. Zach kind of work his way back. I think he's actually starting Pepperdine. That's a really good development for the Bruins. Then Pepperdine. Granted they played a tough schedule, but they're off to a rough start. They need some wins as well. The WCC, you, myself, and Fit talked about in the preseason. The WCC typically does not get the benefit of the doubt. So if you go a non-conference at WCC, you're not in a very good spot.
Yeah. I'm going to give you San Francisco at Stanford. Obviously, USF, very well coached. They're always in the hunt in the WCC. And, they won that series from UCLA. I think we're a year early on Stanford, but we know they have talent. So Stanford's off to a good start this year. I'm just still kind of peeking at them. I'm just not ready to commit on the Cardinal. I love their roster, but it's a very young roster.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, outside of Brendan Beck, I feel like their pitch staff has a lot to prove. So that's the question mark with me.
So this weekend in the SEC is kind of a, it's more of a primer weekend. There's not the crazy matchups as usual, but anything got your attention in the SEC, KR?
I mean,
We did mention BC going to Auburn. That's kind of the one outlier.
I'll tell you what. Keep an eye on Georgia State at Tennessee.
Yeah.
I know some people who haven't been following things this year are going to laugh, but Brad Strombaugh has those guys playing a lot of good competition. They're playing really well. They beat Vandy in the opening game. They fought, Vandy tooth and nail throughout that series. They played really well against West Virginia opening weekend, and then they got a big midweek win over Georgia Tech. Was it Tuesday night? So Georgia State with Ryan Watson and company, they've got some legit arms. I remember writing them up in the preseason, and the thing that stood out about those guys for me was outside of Ryan Watson. They had some really nice arms. I mean, it was 1, 2, 3, and then they had like a couple of relievers that were like, oh, that guy sounds really impressive. So they're for real, I think. I mean, the question is, with how difficult their schedule is, what will their record be like? What will their resume be like? But I think they're a quality club.
Yeah. Somebody asked about the Lobos. Mac Chambers, the shortstop for New Mexico, he is must-see TV. He is super electric. And the Lobos are back. They got their swagger back. They will be in the hunt in the Mountain West. There's no question. And you're right. Georgia State will play anybody, anywhere. I love that. SoCon, KR, what do we got in the SoCon? Mercer going to South Kakalaki. That's always interesting.
Yeah.
I
Nothing.
think that's the one.
Nothing really intrigues me. Charlotte actually, I think, faces Tennessee next weekend. So we'll find a lot more about Bryce McGowan and Christian Lowe's and guys like that, and Robert Woodard's was his second season now. So Western Carolina's on an interesting series, but that will be interesting to see if Charlotte just continues to play well leading up to that UT series.
We mentioned in the Southland, we mentioned McNeese State and La Tech. I mean, Troy and Southeastern Louisiana, that's always interesting to me. Those are two really good programs.
Very similar.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like they have a distinct style. They're always either a regional team or kind of in that, next tier trying to knock on the door. We covered the Summit. We got Creighton and Omaha. You mentioned the Leathernecks. Leathernecks getting a lot of love early on. I love it. Anything in the Sun Belt, KR, besides what we already mentioned?
Not really.
I mean, Middle Tennessee and South Al, that's always, those are two good teams. Be interesting.
Yeah, UTSA, we were just talking about UTSA, kind of roughing up Sam Houston State, UT Arlington with Cade Winquist, and was it the Rivera kid on the mound? They've got a couple of pretty good arms, the Mavs do. And I'm pretty sure they're off to a pretty good start. Yeah, that's an intriguing series. Pat Hallmark doing some work down in Roadrunner country.
Yeah, that was a good get. That was a good get for those guys. Hey, so the final league we got here, KR, is the WCC. I'm just fascinated by this league, period. It really breaks my heart that this league always, we talked about it earlier, it always ends up being a one-bid league. I hate that for this league. This league's better than that. But this is another reason why we need 72 bids. We need 72 teams in the tournament so leagues like the WCC don't keep getting squeezed. But Portland and Gonzaga, I can't tell if that's non-conference or conference. I think Gonzaga is going to have something to say about that league. Hey, San Diego is off to a good start. Them playing UCSD, which is one of those D2 powers. I think the WC is always interesting, but they do. What is our boy Shotgun called it? It calls it the Conference of Cannibals, that they just eat each other.
Yeah,
I think it's an unofficial nickname for the WCC.
Stick with unofficial now, and then UCSD against San Diego to me is interesting.
Yes,
UCSD
agreed.
And company, they actually beat San Diego State last weekend in one game 9-3, but lost 3 of 4. So they get another chance to beat a crosstown opponent this weekend.
Yes. Yeah, the WAC. I think the WAC is our last league, KR. I was erroneous. What if you had to pick here today, KR, who are you picking for the WAC? Who would be your favorite?
I'll go with Sac State. I mean, I saw Texas State in the fall. They can really hit. They've got some quality arms. So even under the circumstances, to sweep Texas State, I thought was pretty impressive. You know,
Yes.
Reggie C will have those guys ready in conference.
That's right. Yeah, everyone that saw Sacramento State against Arizona State that I've talked to from a scout standpoint just said their pitching was really good. The Adams kid, they said, was
Yeah.
legit high pick, and he's not even Friday night. Scotty Randall's Friday night. They said he could really pitch. And then the Eli Saul kid, this big Canadian, on Sunday, they said, it's spraying all over the place, but it's 97. It's not comfortable for the hitters. So I love it.
Well, the other one I would keep an eye on is Washington State and Seattle. I mean,
Yeah.
Washington State with Kyle Manzardo off to a phenomenal start. It feels like Brian Green's kind of pushing all the right buttons. And you have Seattle sitting at 4-3. They took a series in Portland, and they actually split a 4-gamer with Oregon. So that'll give us a pretty good idea of kind of where Washington State stands.
Yep, I love it. So, KR, before I let you go, let me reset your weekend. So tomorrow you're going to do Ty Madden against Houston.
Yeah, and then Shriners at 3 o'clock. I want to say it's TCU, Sam. I don't know. I'll look.
So are you going to do Shriners and then go over to UH?
Yeah, it's like a 5-minute drive.
Oh, no way. Really?
Yeah, depending on traffic.
Oh, my gosh. And so what time does the festivities kick off at Shriners?
It starts at 11. I will be there around 3.
That's right. It's good. We got to ease in, KR. It's a long weekend. And Sunday you're done, right? It's only 3 days of Shriners this year?
Yeah, we're done Sunday. So, I'll Saturday. We've got a was it? I can't remember my daughter's team name now. C something. The C something. C monkey, C otters. I don't know.
Softball?
Yeah, she has a game Saturday morning, so we got that big game, and then I'll go to Shriners right after that. And then Sunday I'll be at Shriners all day.
And so for your outfits for the weekend, KR, are we going ball cap all 3 days? What do we plan our get-ups? What are we going? We're
got to rep the Republic.
All 3 days, that hat's going to be in play?
Yeah, I don't change.
That's the gamer this year?
I don't change hats. I do change clothes.
That's all right. You don't need to change hats. I'm with you. I like it. That is a big-time lid right there, the Republic. Oh, excellent. KR, well done, man. Happy Thursday. Have a great weekend.
It's always a great night when I can talk to Mike Rooney.
That's right. Amen. That's what we need more of that in the universe. So, all right, KR, have a great weekend, man. We'll talk to you. See you, everybody.